So, tell me, have you always lived in Cobb County?
No, I have not.
How did you end up here with your family?
I actually, before this, lived in Seattle, Washington. I moved there for work and lived there for about 3 years, and that's where I met my husband. So once we got married, then I got a job offer here, and my job moved us here to Cobb County.
Gotcha. So did not have to, it was a decision for your job, not for his?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Was there a reason that you chose Cobb County over others?
Yes, the cost of living was very good, and the realtor that we were working with, she kind of specialized in this area, and she sold it to us as far as just great neighborhoods, good schools, cost of living, all that stuff.
Gotcha. That's cool that you lived in Seattle, though. I would not have thought that. It's so far.
Yeah, it is. And I was living in Ohio before that, so it was a really far away move from where I grew up.
Gotcha. So you lived in Ohio first, and
Yes.
how long did you live there?
I lived there my whole life, all the way through college.
Okay.
Until I was 21, and then I moved to Seattle
Okay, gotcha.
for 3 years, and then I actually moved to Columbus, Ohio for a year, moved back to Seattle, and then moved here.
Oh, wow, gotcha.
Yeah.
So that's a long, long history
so
from before.
Yeah, back and forth.
And around how long have you been living in Cobb then?
Well, we got married in 2005, and we moved here. I always have to look. I have a ring with the date. So we got married in July of 2005, and then I got the job offer in December of 2005. So essentially from, let's say, 2006 until now. So what is that? 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So
that is quite a bit.
A pretty long time, yeah. And we've been here we've lived in Cobb County the whole time that we've lived in the state.
Gotcha. And so are you a homeowner here, or do you rent your home?
Yes, we are homeowners.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And can you describe the type of structure or house that you live in?
It's a single family
Okay.
house.
2-story or?
2-story with a basement.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's cool that you lived on the West Coast.
It was so much fun. And I was in my early 20s, so just being single and working and being in this awesome city where there was so many different things to do, and it really was amazing. We actually thought we were going to stay there until this job came up, and my husband was like, "Well, you should think about it."
Mm-hmm.
But we loved it out there, and we actually had his family. He had a couple aunts and uncles that were married with kids that lived out there, so we did have some family out there. But for the most part, we were just young and working, and it was super fun.
What did you like about it there so much, or compared to here at least?
Well, I think definitely the landscape, because we had the ocean. There were rivers and lakes, you had the mountains, and I traveled for my job, so I would go to Alaska sometimes. I would travel to Oregon, I traveled to Montana, all those Iowa, so I had kind of been to, or not Iowa, Idaho. So I got to go to all these different states around there that were really, really beautiful. So just the landscape was amazing. I loved it.
What kind of job did you have that allowed you to travel so much like that?
Well, I started off as a sales and marketing rep in a management training program. So I covered Lowe's stores for Newell Rubbermaid was the company. And I had 7 or 8 stores that I was in charge of, just maintaining and trying to increase sales and developing relationships. And then after that, I got promoted into a training position to train new reps on a specific product line. And then after that, I got promoted to be a manager. So once I was a manager, then I covered 7 different states because I had reps in all of those areas. So then I would travel to work with those reps, and that's how I got to see so much of the Northwest.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, and the Northwest is really neat. It's different than California, and there's different kinds of West Coast, the Northwest versus.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
How would you describe the difference there?
I think the Northwest is a little more grainy and earthy, and people don't care as much about their appearance, and they're not shallow in the way that when you go some places in California, everyone's all about like how they look, and everybody tries to look perfect and has, Botox and all this stuff. And in the Northwest, people are just like more whoever they are. Like everybody's different, and people embrace being different and unique. And that was one thing I really loved about it, was just that you could kind of be whoever you wanted to be, and people weren't judgmental and things like that.
Did you like living there better than you like living here?
Well, I think because I'm older and I have a family and kids, this makes sense to live here. But I think if you took me when I was 24 and asked me that question, here versus there, I would say Seattle, like all the way.
Okay, yeah. Gotcha. Do you have rooftop solar for your home?
We do not.
Could you tell me why you don't have rooftop solar? Was the decision made for you, or did you make that decision consciously?
We've always bought houses that were already built. We've never built a new house. So any house, and this is our second house, both houses that we bought did not have solar power.
Okay.
So I guess you could say the decision was made for us.
Gotcha. So you didn't think, did you ever think about installing solar? Or was it just because, the house is already built, we didn't think about installing?
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. If you had the option, would you put rooftop solar on your home?
Yes. I think absolutely. Especially with the days of sunshine. One thing when we were moving from Seattle to here, and we were looking at statistics for different things and the weather, we read that on average, Atlanta gets 90 more days of sunshine than Seattle.
Oh, wow.
So as far as sunshine and solar power, a place like Atlanta would make sense, I think, because we do get more sunshine on average than other places in the country.
Could you tell me some more reasons why you personally would or would not want to adopt solar?
I think I would, because it would save money, and it's also environmentally friendly. We're not relying on resources like we do currently, where we're using up natural resources, and it's something that's always there. We have solar powered lights for our walkway up to our front stoop. So we have a couple solar things here and there, and on a scale, as far as being scalable, those are small scale things, but I definitely wouldn't be opposed to using it for larger scale energy use too.
Gotcha. In your opinion, in general, what are some pros and cons of getting solar that are not economic?
I would say pros would be that I would feel like I was doing something good for the environment. A con would be that it doesn't seem like it would be 100% reliable all the time.
Gotcha.
Because I don't know how it's stored. Does it store it up and then it's just there, or is it something that's, you have to have sunshine or whatever more frequently? I don't know the ins and outs of that.
Do you think people in this area or in Georgia in general would generally agree with your opinion, or do they think differently than you?
I think it depends on where you are. I think if you were inside the perimeter and in more progressive industrial hip areas where people probably think about things like that more, I think opinions would be different than maybe out here in the suburbs where, people are thinking more about what's going to be the, cheapest way for me to get my energy, because I have a family to support and, my money's going out the door for this, this, and this. So I think it would be geographical.
Okay. So I'm going to give you the map of the U.S. and on there, label however you want, just where you think people have the most rooftop solar energy on their homes.
Okay.
And you can just circle things too if you wanted to. You don't even have to be like, oh, I know what state this is.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking of in Wyoming, just from different magazines that I've read, and my parents have some friends out there, and being out there for work, people are much more in tune with nature, and I could see just the whole state of Wyoming being somewhere that they would probably use solar power. This is kind of just a funny, I would say, because they have 24 hours of darkness in some times of the year, and then they have 24 hours of light. So
in Alaska.
Yeah, so it could be a good, really great candidate for solar, depending on the energy stores, or if they had like something they use during winter versus summer. So.
Okay, cool. Is this good? Like, are you done labeling?
I think so.
Take your time. If you want to label more, you're good.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably also circle Texas.
Okay, cool. So, could you tell me a bit about why you chose the areas you did? What was your reasoning behind it?
Okay, so when I worked in consumer goods, consumer packaged goods, and knowing my husband's industry, he also works in consumer goods. These were always the areas where we had the highest volume as far as sales. And it's because these are the areas where people have a lot of money. So if you look at like the Northwest, California, Arizona, and I also circled some just because they have a lot of daylight as well, like Arizona, and actually Nevada would probably be another candidate for that. Texas, Florida, the Northeast, and then also like Chicago area. So I kind of circled it around states and cities where there are people in Alaska, just because of the reason I said with how much sunlight they get throughout the year, certain times of the year. But I would just say people with more money, and this isn't true everywhere, but tend to maybe they're willing to try different things, or kind of explore things that would cost more. So I guess I'm just looking at it more from an economic standpoint. And the West Coast too, and the East Coast, New York, these two areas, people are more progressive generally, and usually open to new ideas. And there's a lot of people that come from other countries that live in these areas. And so I think it's just more progressive as a whole, kind of up here and here.
Gotcha. And I realized you circled, or you labeled Seattle.
Yeah.
So did you, so when you lived in Seattle, did you notice more solar power there?
I mean, I don't know if I was really paying attention to it when I was in my 20s, but I definitely think wind, I remember that there was, like wind energy out on the West Coast was something that was more prevalent than you never hear about that or see anything around here, this area. So I think it just, maybe that's what stuck in my mind. It's just that there were, people were doing things differently than you would see like in the Midwest and the more conservative states.
Gotcha. So more alternative energy.
Yes.
But a different kind.
Right, alternative energy. But I can't say 100% like, yes, people were definitely doing solar power. But you would see a lot more of like solar panels than I ever see here, for sure.
Oh, so you did see more solar there? Okay. Cool. So in general, what do you think what makes the community or the people from these different communities so different from the people from Cobb County or from Georgia in general?
Well, I think there's a lot of different layers to it, but I think as a whole, people that live in Cobb County and Georgia are just more traditionalist, more conservative. And this is just one funny example, but so when we lived in Seattle, there was a limit on the amount of trash that you could throw away. You were only allowed to throw away like whatever would fit in your bin, your trash bin. And it was really small compared to the trash bins here in Georgia. And the recycling bin was like the size of the trash bins here. So it was reversed. Like everybody recycled and there was a limit and you couldn't put like extra trash or anything like that. And you would get charged for it. To where when we moved here and we were throwing away stuff when we moved into our house, we called the trash company and they're like, oh yeah, it's like unlimited. Like you can have unlimited amounts of trash. And it just wasn't something that was really top of mind or, as a community that people are as concerned about as in Seattle. There were like strict things in place about waste and conserving, making sure you weren't, contributing to the landfills and things like that. So that experience makes me think that people here, we kind of are the last ones to kind of catch on to things like solar power.
Gotcha. So do you think that politics or the government plays a factor in the different areas, like local government?
Yes. Yeah, I would say so.
Do you think that there are other major factors that take place that are also non-economic? That would make our communities different, or that people would think differently?
Yes. Yeah.
So can you name some if you can think of them?
I think that if you look at a place like Texas, there is a lot of oil in Texas, and oil is big business and big money. So I guess I don't know if that's considered economic or not, but in Texas, you're probably not going to get people that are going to be as pro solar power, because they're relying on people using fossil fuels, and that's part of their livelihood and their industry, and so yeah, I would say just where corporations are based and what their interests are as far as being successful and profitable plays a role, and then the influence that they have on politicians and local government in the area.
Gotcha. But you did happen to label Texas here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what was your reasoning for that when you were thinking, like when you were labeling it? Why did you label
I think
Texas?
initially I labeled Texas because I know there's people that have a lot of money in Texas, and so I was kind of going with the economic philosophy that I was using to circle all the other ones. But thinking about like the amount of oil and fossil fuel produced out of Texas, I probably would change my mind. Actually, take Texas off as an early adopter of solar.
Okay. And was there a reason you circled Florida as well?
The same reason, just because of my experience in the consumer goods industry, and just looking at where people have money to spend and more disposable income. I think just like I said before, that anything that's going to get adopted, it usually happens on the outer west coast and east coast of the country, and then works its way in all industries. So I'm just making an assumption that that would hold true for the same thing like solar power.
Okay. We're going to do pretty much the same exercise that we did with the U.S. map. So if you could label on there where you perceive that people would have the most solar power adoption.
This is a lot harder to think about, because if looking at it from a land perspective, people that don't live in concentrated urban areas have more land, but I don't even know if solar power, if you need more land or more space, or do you just put it on your roof? Do you really need to have that in order to have solar power? I really don't know.
Well, if we're just talking about rooftop solar power, where would you think people would have it?
Okay. I would say probably in these, more the urban areas than anywhere else. And then, I would just because I have friends that live in Athens, and knowing that the college is there, I feel that maybe Athens is more progressive because there are educators that are there, and there's research. Just like what you're doing right now. So, I would probably circle Athens, and then same thing for Savannah. It's a very progressive small town with a college. So again, you have people that could be more open to using things that are a little more progressive.
Okay, cool.
And not so much for any other town.
So not southern Georgia.
No, not so much.
So is this it kind of looks like rural versus urban here with what you circle a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a bit about what makes the people from the places that you circled so different from where we live?
Well, I think
that's kind of where we live.
Right. I would say, Kennesaw could definitely be considered to be in this circle. Even though, because Roswell, Marietta, I would say I would include Kennesaw in that, because it's anywhere that's within an hour of downtown Atlanta.
Okay.
So
what would you think that people, I guess that it would include from where we live, would have the most solar power adoption?
Probably just because of the influence of living so close to a large city. So, I think that even though we're out in the suburbs, we still have the influence of a big city with, things that are, Atlanta is a large city with a lot of corporations, and we have a lot of people from all over the world. So I think that we do have the right mix for, but then if you look at Atlanta versus the West Coast cities and some of the other cities that I've been to, we have transportation issues still, and a lot of people still drive cars, and people don't use public transportation they do in the way they do in like Chicago or Seattle. So I mean, that's why this is kind of a hard map for me to look at, just because as a state, I don't feel that we're very progressive when it comes to things like, renewable energy and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I really would have maybe circled anything because I didn't circle it here. You know what I'm saying? Right. So like if I'm forced to circle somewhere, like, okay, what would be the most progressive, the early adopters? It would probably be these cities, but really as a state, I don't really believe that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Do you think that people from the places that you circled have different mindsets from the people from the rest of Georgia that you didn't circle?
Yes, and I would say my biggest two reasons for that would be that there are colleges here, and so there are new ideas, there is research, there are people that come from all over the world that work for these colleges, so therefore it makes it a progressive city. And because Atlanta is such a big city and you do have, people from all over, all walks of life, and different experiences, I think when you get out to these other cities, and I have friends who have family members that live in Macon. I used to travel to Columbus because we had a distribution facility there. Mm-hmm. So I've been exposed to the smaller cities and towns within Georgia, and it's like stepping back in time sometimes when you go to these places, which can be kind of cool. Mm-hmm. Because life is simpler and more basic, but also when it comes to progressive ideas like, hey, let's everyone do solar power, I think those towns, it would take a lot longer to get people to kind of buy into it.
Gotcha. Since you did circle the area that our community is in, have you seen people here who have solar on their rooftops?
No, I don't think ever.
It's so interesting because, like, you would think that people would have them here because it's so progressive. Like, it's the big city. It's like everything should be here, but everyone.
And we have the largest airport in the world, so you would think, okay, we're one of the largest airports in the U.S. That we would have things like that, but we don't. I think because it's the South, and the South is very traditional when it comes to certain ideas.
Gotcha. Does that play into the politics thing again, the conservative mindset?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Gotcha. Yes, okay. So what about, you mentioned your close friends a little bit, so what about most of your close friends in Georgia? Do they have solar on their rooftops?
No, I don't know.
Could you take a guess as to why they would or would not want it for their rooftops?
I think it's just something that's not readily available or, discussed as a community. So it's not top of mind. And we are in the suburbs where people are focused on different things than, looking at, which, even when it comes to like hybrid cars, you do see a lot more hybrid cars on the road today than maybe you saw 10 years ago. Like my husband had a Prius 10 years ago, and you would see them here and there, but now you see it everywhere, mm-hmm. And it's a lot more commonplace. So I think once some people start doing it and it starts to become more commonplace, then it would spread, but we don't have that first initial kind of step being taken. Or even offered, really. I mean, there's no companies out there that are trying to sell solar power or help push solar power around here.
Gotcha.
But I don't know. I feel like sometimes I'm like completely out of the loop because I'm raising 3 kids and I'm not always up on the latest news and things like that. So, I'm just making assumptions.
Yeah, that's fine. From just thinking of the perspectives of the people that are close to you or just people that you know around you, what do you think some of the pros and cons that are non-economic, like what would they see in terms of that for like wanting it for their own rooftops?
I think people do want to feel like they're doing good, and to feel good about that I'm helping the environment or I'm saving energy or, not taking things from the earth that is not a renewable energy source. So I think all of those kind of Good Samaritan bullet points would come into play.
Gotcha. Do you think there would be any non-economic barriers to having people want to adopt solar that you know of, like that of people that you know?
I think maybe just the inconvenience of having to get it. So, I mean, if you look at like, I'm just trying to relate it to something I do know about, like cable. Everyone kept cable forever and ever because it was convenient and it was easy and it was available, and the cable companies just took advantage and charged more and more and more money. Well, then somebody started to figure out like, hey, I'm just not going to have cable and I'm just going to figure it out a different way. And then a bunch of people started doing it, and now it's like the cable companies are in big trouble because so many people are like, no, I'm not going to pay for this anymore. So I think, but I guess that's kind of an economic factor because it's still related.
Yeah.
It
also has to do with new ideas, so like the progressive behavior, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, definitely, for sure. And I guess that's where I was kind of going with that, was that, when something, I've just noticed living in this area that you have to get those early adopters, and then once they do something and it starts to become mainstream, then everyone's like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to cut cable and I'm not going to have cable anymore. But you have to have those early adopters to kind of, so I guess just the conservative ideals and just, doing things the way they were always done is probably a hurdle.
Mm-hmm. Do you think but like living in Seattle influenced your relationship with the environment?
Yes, I would say 100%. But since I've been here, I've probably taken steps backwards.
Oh, okay.
Because I have kids and I'm more about convenience and, I think I've kind of gotten away from that, and I'm not as mindful of it as I probably was a good 10, 15 years ago. Like I buy plastic straws and my kids use plastic straws and I use plastic straws. And like in Seattle, I would have been like, well, I'm, not going to use straw because it doesn't, decompose and it goes into a landfill and it just sits there. And, so I've probably regressed since I've lived here.
Gotcha. That's interesting.
Unfortunately.
Though. Yeah.
Maybe I'll make up for it later
so,
when our carbon footprint has gone down, when we don't have 3 kids in the house.
Yeah.
But.
So do you think because of just geographically where you've lived, your mindset has had to change, or is it also just because of lifestyle and purposes and stuff like that?
I think both. I mean, I think, environmental factors and community factors influence my behavior. But then also just conveniences and lifestyle, having a growing family and just wanting to do whatever's easiest.